So what better way to start than to discuss the transparency and attribution of success in mobile ads than with two of the leaders in this industry who are working to serve ads to Facebook, to Twitter, to the heart of the ecosystem where Facebook, Twitter are some of the largest publishers, if not the largest publishers in mobile. So I'd like to introduce the two gentlemen who are starting off tonight with me, the CEO and founder of HasOffers, Peter Hamilton, come on up, and the CEO and founder of Ampush, Jesse Pujji.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
I wasn't sure how lowrider this couch was going to be.
Yeah.
For the future people up here.
So tracking ad impressions and the effectiveness of advertising is a critical need in mobile. So whose job is it? Is it yours, Peter, or is it Facebook's? Who's in the best position to do something here to help the industry?
Well, I think the real question is, what are you talking about when you say tracking or attribution? Are you talking about insight? Like, are you talking about, you know, how effective was this ad overall? What was the basic performance so that I, as a marketer, know that campaign worked or that campaign did not work, right? That's sort of the first layer. I think the second step for attribution is actually doing reconciliation. So that for a campaign that I'm running with some publisher, if I want to pay them based on the installs they provided to me or some in-app purchases they provided to me, there needs to be some end-to-end loop that allows for that attribution all to take place,
right,
and to make sure that we both agree that that was the performance of the advertising, therefore I'm going to pay you this, and we're square, right? You know, a lot of the major platform players out there, they sell ads maybe on impression, they sell ads on click, and they're starting to sell ads based on deeper relevant activities that happen within the app. And if that's the case, it becomes much more complicated for an app developer or a publisher to determine that effectiveness across all of these major platforms at once, right? So you need somebody that is sort of nonpartisan, that's pure technology play, that's something that can just sit between all these advertising partners to help reconcile those numbers.
Jesse, you know, we had ComScore, we had Omniture for the desktop web.
Sure.
They played a big role as kind of an independent arbiter. The role that Peter has actually tried to do at HasOffers as a leading attribution player. But Peter just got kicked off of Facebook's platform for doing just that, right? And so there's been some, right, so you probably saw the news, guys, right? That HasOffers was kicked off of Facebook's program for attribution and measuring. Can you talk a little bit about the agenda of these bigger players? Where does ComScore and Adobe fit in? What can they be doing in this new era?
Sure. I don't know if you want to say anything since he just said it before I...
Go for it first.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
I just want, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I'll kind of answer the first question and transition to the second question. At the end of the day, you know, just like any business or marketplace, there's buyers and there's sellers, right? And in the case of a publisher, Facebook, or a small app developer, you know, Flappy Bird, they're selling something. They're selling ad impressions, right? And a buyer is out there saying, I want to buy these ad impressions. And how many people have bought a diamond ring in the audience? Raise your hand. There's a little company known as GIA, right? And this company certifies that the thing that you're buying, right, and the thing that you're selling is what they say it is, right? And so my perspective on this is, to answer your first question, kind of transition to the second question, if I'm a seller of something, I want to make sure my buyer spends more money, right? Therefore, I want to prove to them, in whatever means necessary, that whatever I'm selling them is delivering the value that I claim. And similarly, if I'm a buyer and I'm spending my money, I better make sure that whatever I'm buying is being tracked properly, attributed properly, so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, my answer would be the buyers and sellers, who then would either turn to third-party platforms like my company or Peter's company to do that, or to ComScore, or and that's where the market opportunity exists. So I guess my answer to that is there should be third parties, but the buyers and sellers are the ones who should make sure that those third parties exist so that they can track and know that they're buying and selling to each other in the right way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Peter, did you have a...
Yeah. I will say that, you know, it was a very interesting relationship and everything that we've had with Facebook over time. We worked very hard with them over the last 2 years, building the mobile app install ads program, right? And getting a lot of people addicted to it because they can really target users at a very, very granular level. And that's really powerful for like the gaming publishers that we were talking about earlier. Our goal is really just to be like this purely unbiased player, right? We're just software. And we really believe that the relationship exists between the publisher and the advertiser, the ones that are doing business with each other. And hindsight's 20/20. I think had I had the opportunity to go back and do this over, I would have pushed so hard for the main agreements to be between those two parties and not really for us to get caught up in the middle so much. Because the advertiser can build their own platform for doing this. They can build their own software for doing attribution, determining what's working and what's not. We're just helping facilitate that, right? So, I mean, for us, we're happy to work with Facebook in the future. Like, we want to be very friendly to all those in the ecosystem. I do believe that, that there's a lack of really great technology for this. So it's a shame that that's not currently available, and you'll hear the pain out there of app developers that are trying to do that right now. But yeah, we're happy to exist and help with that. And in the meantime, we're really working closely with Google and Microsoft and Amazon and all these folks that are also big distribution hubs. And honestly, if this hadn't happened at the time that it did, I think we and a lot of app developers out there would still be putting sort of all their eggs in the Facebook basket. And the way it's going now, I'm spending a whole lot of time with Apple. I'm spending a whole lot of time with Google. Like, I'm really trying to see the entire fragmented space and understand how do we bring like real reconciliation and real attribution that is unbiased to all of these people.
What is the responsibility of companies as big as Google and Facebook that, are the companies that have the scale because they have sign-ons on the desktop, they have the ability to sign people or to follow people on the mobile device. And they're really the only two companies that have that scale, right? So Facebook and Google have very strong positions, and they should, ideally be responsible for the whole industry, or take steps to make sure the industry is coming along. What are the responsibilities, do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, one thing about the web, right, is the web became the web because it was completely open and unmanaged, or it was left to anybody with a browser and anybody with a server could talk to each other anywhere in the world very quickly, right? And I guess I have two perspectives that are sort of aligned, right? One is that in general, if you're the big guy and you're a part of this, you need to kind of ensure that transfers over to the mobile experience. I think it is they have to be the vigilant vanguards of the web more so than their economies, if you're Apple or Google in particular. And then I think the second perspective is aligned, which is they got to do what's right, for their businesses, right? And I think ultimately those two things will align. And maybe there's fits and starts as you go, but ultimately keeping things open, giving people choice, having more competition will be better for everybody's business ultimately. So they should do it from a sort of business choice standpoint.
I would totally agree that now there are these silos, sort of the web in these mobile app stores. Right? Before, you could just go to any website. No one can really own the conversion experience. But now, because these exist within Google Play, they exist within the Apple App Store, you've got these entire silos that Apple and Google can officially own, right? They can be the lords of those places. What I think what's really interesting about Apple in this particular situation is that they are hardware focused, and they want to sell more machines. They want to get more out there, and they are also OS focused, right? They want everyone in the world to be using this OS at a premium, and so advertising and sort of how much information they're able to provide to developers, how many tools they provide to developers, and all of that is really just to help developers grow on the platform so that everyone wants to use the devices, right? And I love that because it causes them to kind of want to have a very open perspective about everything. Like they want to empower developers to do better and more targeted advertising that has real relevance, like you were talking about earlier.
Now, you've been talking a lot, Peter, on your blog about the changes that were going on in iOS 7. I assume, Jesse, you've been following that. This idea that the Apple is opening up the IDFA for non-advertisers as well. So folks such as yourself, perhaps, or is it trying to do the tracking itself? Can you elaborate on what?
So there's two worlds of Apple, right? There's iAd, which is Apple's actually advertising network. It'd be like Google AdWords, but for Apple, or I guess more like AdMob, right? And they recently have provided an attribution method within the operating system that allows developers to determine, hey, yes, this user that converted actually touched an advertisement from iAd. That's something that happens totally at the OS level. I think it's really cool because it's actually not sort of fed through the iAd team. It's purely like operating system level, direct to developer. Developer gets all the data. We're not like trying to engineer it on the back end and make sure that you're only getting the right amount of value for what you're buying and all that sort of thing. So that's really cool. The other side of it is that Apple has the IDFA, which is an identifier they launched over a year ago that's become very ubiquitous for determining what users are doing on mobile devices. And up until very recently, their specific terms of service said you can only use this identifier if you're doing ad serving within an app. And no one really paid too much attention to that for the better part of a year. Everyone just started using it, Jesse, right? Facebook, Google, everybody's like using IDFA. And that became sort of the standard for the identifier to determine, yes, user clicked on this ad, and then user installed this app. And the ID of that user matches, therefore we know that this goes together, right? And last week, well, I guess even a couple of months ago is when they started rejecting apps, actually, that were using it for that very purpose. And not
it was inconsistent and unclear why it was happening.
Yeah, it was very inconsistent. There were just weird rejections happening and stuff like that. And the whole industry was like, oh my gosh, are they going to take away IDFA? This is really scary, right? And then last week, they actually launched some new features around this that allow the app developer to say what they're using IDFA for. One of those is ad serving. Another one of those is attribution from click to install. Another one of those is attribution from click to some other in-app engagement. The app developer can literally say, click, 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 I'm using IDFA for these things, and now I'm allowed to use it. And use it freely and use it openly for determining, are these ads working, are they not, for determining the performance of my campaigns with all these different ad providers out there. So pretty cool.
That is interesting. Jesse, is this inside baseball, or is this something that, I mean, does rise to the level of a cookie equivalent, right? So I think everyone's looking for what that equivalent is from the desktop web, where I think we were talking before.
Yeah, I think it's not inside baseball. I mean, it's a tracking mechanism that Apple came out on the right side for the ecosystem for their business, right, on it, because if you can't let the gaming companies and the various travel and productivities apps out there track how they make money, then they're not going to make as much money, which means they're not going to feed back into your ecosystem, right? I mean, it all kind of plays into that circle of life in business, right? And I think it's them coming up with a good standard, frankly, for their world that I'm sure Google or Apple will talk and figure out how to align on that in the right way. So I think it's the right thing, and I guess it's as close to a cookie as you can get in some sense. And even Apple's going to allow for, I think, to minimize tracking if the user chooses to minimize tracking. So that's another kind of similar cookie type feature, similar to the way a browser in Chrome or IE does.
Now, Jesse, you're serving a lot of clients that are trying to reach users of Facebook, of Twitter. You're one of the favored partners of Facebook's platform, right? I think there's a dozen of them. Can you talk a little bit about what your biggest clients are saying, what they're looking for, what they need?
In terms of tracking and they all want more users, cheaper, and higher quality.
Yeah.
That's really what they want.
And is attribution a part of that, or is?
Yeah, absolutely, right. I mean, if you can't track, I mean, that's the triangle, right? The holy grail is I want as much volume as cheaply and as high quality as I possibly can get, right? Now, if you can't track stuff, if you can't measure, you can't improve it. And so it's critical that people can measure downstream activities, monetization that's happening inside of the app after someone's downloaded it, and attribute that back to the person or the segment that was targeted with an ad. And without that, Facebook's business doesn't work, Apple's business ultimately doesn't work, and all these other apps in the ecosystem businesses don't work. And so it is absolutely the circulatory system of this whole mobile ecosystem, and it's critical that it works.
Can you talk? I mean, so who are some of your bigger clients?
I'm not going to remember who I'm allowed to say and who I'm not allowed to say up here. Let's not play that game. But the biggest mobile advertisers are our clients.
Okay.
Hotel Tonight's a good one. I think I can say I'm pretty.
Right. Okay. Cool. And I'd like to take questions from the audience. You may just have to shout it out at some point. We've got a few minutes left, but rebrokering. We've been writing some pieces at VentureBeat about this increasing trend from large publishers. In this case, we were talking about Supercell, which is one of the, I think, top 10 advertisers on mobile, because it's a giant games publisher trying to reach users for its publishing, and it's blacklisting entire companies for rebrokering users, right? And I think Appia was mentioned. Rich Riley, who was up here early, just wrote that story. I think he broke that story about them getting blacklisted. Is there a lot of that beginning to happen? Because we haven't seen a whole lot of that until now.
Well, there's always a lot of, there's always in every industry, there's some bad actors, and Jesse and I were talking, he mentioned the Wolf of Wall Street as an example, right? If you've seen that. But I think, there's even since the very beginning, there's been people trying to figure out like kind of how to game the system and how to work it in. Really the goal for us is to try to show like, who all is touching the user before they convert. So therefore, we can maybe see some of these early signs that there's some sort of fast click redirecting going on. There's somebody swooping in and grabbing the last click all of a sudden, right? And we're trying to figure out like what are some easy ways to figure that out. I wouldn't say that at this point it's a widespread problem, but for the people that it's a problem for, it really is a problem. And the example that you gave, like, Supercells or King.coms or like big companies out there that have a very ubiquitous game that everyone's playing. They care a lot about their brand, right? And they're buying like crazy. They have these huge budgets and they're trying to man all these ships at once. And the real problem that's happening is they can't find all these guys doing this stuff. And just a few of them really hurts because they provide a really bad brand experience. I've seen ads that have come through Tinder, right? Or at least people forwarded them to me. That where it's a beautiful girl and you connect with her and she connects back and then you're like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm playing this really cool mobile app, and you're like, cool. And then a tracking link comes through and you click on it, and it goes to an install. But obviously that provides a really bad user experience. And what's happening there oftentimes is that whoever it is that set up that little ad campaign is grabbing a link off some other network and throwing it on something else, and they're getting a little cut, a little bit of margin. And the big problem is that the network that they took it from doesn't know that they did it, right? They don't know where they're placing the ads, and so they're not able to really control the brand experience. And so that's what's really scary, like for those big guys. I wouldn't say that it's like a large percentage of the industry right now, but it is detrimental. It's painful for those that really care about their brand.
Yeah. And we're 20 years into the web, and it happens all the time in the web still too, right? I mean, there's always these bad actors, and I think the word rebrokering, I mean, what does an ad network do at the end of the day, right? I mean, it goes to publishers. It says, you guys can't get the scale I can get, and it goes to an advertiser and says, you can't get the scale I can get. I'm going to sit in the middle. I'm going to take money from you, and I'm going to distribute it this way. So, I mean, that is the fundamental business of that. Now, the kind of examples that Peter gave is where it starts to get into the seedy underbelly that I think does occur in all of these marketplaces. But I don't think it's at all a pervasive world. And at the end of the day, everyone has to, there's buyers and sellers, and again, they have to deliver the product that people think they want to buy and not.
Yeah. Any questions for Peter or Jesse? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for standing up, Ken.
Yeah, no problem. Nice to meet you guys. Happy to talk afterwards. But I guess I was the guy that was quoted in the article that you guys referenced, and I just kind of want to take a second to
Absolutely. Yeah.
set the record straight. So you guys, unfortunately, didn't get your facts completely right. Happy it didn't do anything wrong. It didn't do anything intentionally. Just the way the article was kind of written was a little bit hyperbolic. But that aside, we take advertiser quality very seriously, and the issue that you guys raised was really never around whether or not Supercell was happy with the quality that Happy was bringing to the table. And that's what we do, is we measure would be a real shame at the end of the day if that were the association that people put on Appian and the value that we bring. 'Cause there's not, if you go ask advertisers, they're going to tell you that like this is our sole focus and value is delivering high LTV users. And that's what we do. And if we don't do that, they quit spending on our network. Now, rebrokering is a whole nother topic, but I kind of felt like I had the opportunity, and these, yell at me afterwards if you think I was wasting your time, but I didn't want to mention us by name. I was the guy who voted for at your summit, so I just thought I could.
Huge respect for standing
Yes,
up.
absolutely.
Huge respect.
So,
Well, and I'll go out on a limb and say, sometimes things happen that are not all within your control. And I fully understand this. I mean, we've been in the business of supporting ad networks and media buyers and media planners and agencies for a very long time before we ever created mobile app tracking. And there's always some circumstance where a publisher that you think you trust goes and does something that you didn't actually say was okay. And it's really important that at that point you take the bull by the horns and you cut them off and you say, hey, you're done here. But it's hard to always be on top of that, especially as you grow and get larger and larger at scale. If you think everyone that that is publishing and working with AdSense is fully above board, with Google, then you're wrong. So there's that stuff kind of going on everywhere. But yeah, huge respect for standing up and sharing with us.
yeah, thanks. And unfortunately, we're out of time. But just on that note, I know Rich is here and eager to talk with you and to follow up on the particular case. So thanks for standing up, and we'll.
I would just add, I mean, the whole sort of synthesis of the point of this thing is this broken? Is there an issue here or not? I think the broadest answer is no. It's well tracked. People have their clients have expectations of them. They have to deliver high quality users at scale. And I think it's not where it needs to be, but it's pretty darn good, all things considered.
Great.
We're really young in basically detecting fraud in mobile, right? We have these new identifiers. We have this new information we use, like device headers for doing attribution. And we don't have a lot of systems for going down the rabbit hole like we have developed on the web over the last decade.
Thanks, Peter and Jesse. Appreciate it.
Thanks
for coming. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter.
Oh, thanks.